And yeah, we can get the slides up. So welcome to everyone to our screening of the digital stories that we created in our recent Voices to End FGMC workshop. And this took place last summer. It was hosted over 2 virtual sessions and 2 in-person sessions in Berkeley, California. And I see some people are still kind of joining. So in the chat, everyone is introducing who they are, where they're calling in from, and maybe a little bit about what you do or what brought you to this event today. And we also have a brief intro poll that we wanted to launch. Just asking a few questions about how you found out about the screening, your level of familiarity with FGMC, and also what brought you to the event today. So I'll give you a few moments to do that. And feel free to keep chatting in the chat box as well. There should be closed captioning available for this webinar. So if you want to enable it, there should be little drop down buttons where you can turn on captioning. Okay, and I see a couple of people have submitted the poll. We can just get a few more people to submit. And yeah, so in general, we're just excited for everyone who is joining us today. As I mentioned, we are recording this event and we'll share it out with everybody afterwards. My name is Aris Nuno and I'm Sales Training and Technical Assistance Coordinator. And I will be hosting today's screening alongside my colleagues, Amy Hill from Silence Speaks, who will be talking about the digital storytelling methodology that we used for the workshop. And I'll give you a chance, Amy, if you want to introduce yourself quickly here.
Thank you. So I'm Amy Hill, and I run a program called Silence Speaks at a small nonprofit called Story Center. And we've been working with SEO and the Voices Project since 2018. Really happy to be here.
Awesome. And we also have here Orchid Pusey from the Asian Women's Shelter, who is going to help with leading the Q&A session later today. And I'll give you the space to introduce yourself, Orchid.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you. Again, my name's Orchid, and I am with Asian Women's Shelter in San Francisco. And I had the honor to have worked with both Amy and Maria separately before the Voices Project began, and then at the very beginning of the Voices Project, with the first group workshop that we did in 2018. And I'm excited for you to be able to see what kind of the results of our most recent workshop.
Yeah. And so for the Q&A session, we have a couple of storytellers joining us today. I'm going to be one of them. We also have Jennifer Diaz and also Gugu Mahari, who you'll hear about from later. We can go on to the next slide. So just to provide a little bit of context today, Amy and Orchid have spoke about this a little bit, but to tell you about SEO, we are an organization that works on ending FGMC in Asian and other communities. The organization was founded back in 2015, and Silence Speaks is based in the US, and they specialize in supporting individuals and organizations and using storytelling and participatory media for reflection, education, and social change. And then we also partner with Asian Women's Shelter, who is based in San Francisco, and they provide direct services for survivors of violence and human trafficking, supporting individuals from diverse backgrounds and experiences. And together, we all believe that storytelling can play a powerful role in raising awareness, especially when you're able to apply a trauma-informed storytelling approach. And the Voices Project really helps in supporting those who have been impacted by FGMC to tell their own stories through their own perspectives using their own words. And we bring individuals from different levels of experiences and backgrounds. So we invite survivors, activists, and advocates to participate in the workshop. And I think in bringing all of these voices together, we have been able to take a crucial step in being able to uplift and kind of break the silence that you generally see around the practice of FGMC. And so since 2018, we have organized 8 workshops. We have created 75 of the Voices videos, and the videos have been able to show some representation from 19 different countries. And across all of our social media platforms, we've been able to garner more than 99,000 views of our digital stories. So I think this project has been growing in a very positive direction, and we definitely look forward to hosting more workshops in the future to kind of be able to incorporate the different experiences and um, nuances that individuals might experience with this practice. And I think from there, I'll just go ahead and kick it to you, Amy, with our first story.
And just, sorry, one quick interjection. I'm just going to stop share and reshare because I want to be absolutely confident that I checked the share sound box. So just one moment.
Yeah.
Good. It is selected. Okay.
No worries. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We thought rather than going into description of our workshop process, we would actually begin by sharing one of the stories so that you have something in your mind as we talk about how we actually create these amazing stories. So I think we can go ahead and play Caroline's story. And this story is in Pidgin English, which she did in addition to standard English, so that the story would be really accessible in her community in Nigeria. And it has subtitles as well. All right.
The time wey I be 11 years old for my school for Lagos, Nigeria. Time come wey we dey go upstairs for our class. As I dey waka up the steps, I come look down. Na I see many eyes wey dey look up. I know wetin dem dey look. I no wear dross under my uniform. Shame come catch me. A week before that day, my mama come carry me from Lagos to go our village. Me, I no know why she come carry me make we go do that thing. The only thing wey I know be say na my culture. I no know wetin dem dey make dem do am o. Na later I come find out why dem dey do the thing. Na because say dem no want girls to come become ashawo. That day wey dem cut me for my village, I see win. I never see that kind of pain before for my life. After, I can't get infection for the wound. My whole body can't dey pain me. Then give me agbo drink. I can't well. But I no come fit wear dross because say the cloth, e dey scratch that place. Later, I can't come back to Lagos and school. I no go forget that day for the stairs, the eyes wey dey look inside my body. When we come comot for class, the one wey pass me come happen. Inside the school assembly, when we stand for circle, the teachers dem dey another side. Na im one student just come near me. He lift my uniform, make everybody for see say I naked under. All of them come dey laugh me. I no fit talk. I just come dey cry. Sote, I come run comot go hide myself for inside bush. But later, I come vex for wetin the girls do me. The vexation no be small one. I come back, I beat many of them. After that, They come dey take me make yeye. They no talk to me again. I no come get friends. Every place where I go for that school year, nobody gree talk to me. Na only me dey waka. I no know why my people tradition come put me for this kind of place of isolation. And I no fit ask.
All right, so feel free as we move on to the next slide to type any reactions, comments, and so on, immediate reactions to the story. And we're just going to talk a little bit about our method that we use with the Voices Project. So certainly many people everywhere really love stories, and storytelling has become a pretty big kind of buzzword in public health and advocacy circles. And we thought it would be helpful to go over a few specific reasons for why we feel that personal stories in particular can make a difference when it comes to supporting survivors of FGMC and furthering the advocacy to end this practice. So the first piece has to do with work at the individual and community level in terms of the fact that research does show that telling and listening to real people's real stories can increase self-esteem and well-being, particularly people's sense of self-efficacy, which is which refers to the, their belief that they have that they can handle life's challenges. And then in terms of the community level, the stories that come out of these workshops can bring across factual information together with a personal perspective that draws on emotional experience. And they can really prompt reflection on the part of viewers, who are then able to connect their own life experiences to the stories, which becomes a connection and a starting point for building empathy, which can then spur action on social issues. And then moving into taking action, story sharing and listening are certainly key tools for popular education. So people might be familiar with the work of Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, who really believed that the development of critical consciousness, which he saw as a precursor to any action for social change, must begin with a close examination of one's own experience and its location within the larger unjust social and political environment. And so our digital storytelling approach really does this by supporting people and kind of connecting the dots between their lives and the larger social, cultural, historical, political structures in which their lives are unfolding. So the approach becomes kind of a springboard for involvement in change efforts. And then finally, those of you that are involved in policy advocacy know that personal stories can be extremely useful tools for supporting policy change as well as education and enforcement related to existing policies. So that's a little bit of our rationale. And then I think we had one more slide about our actual workshop approach. So how are digital stories like Caroline's created? So the first piece of the workshop that's really important is focused on supporting participants in identifying what story it is they wish to tell. So of course, they don't have time in just this little 3-minute piece to tell their whole life story. So we support them in zeroing in on a single story from their life. And we do this by showing examples of stories that have been created by other storytellers, and then going over some key curriculum methods from Story Center's 7 Steps for Digital Storytelling. And then comes what really is kind of the heart of the workshop, which is the story circle. And this is when people take turns around a table, sharing their stories and receiving um, validation and support and input and feedback from the fellow participants and from the facilitators. And then the next piece has to do with script writing and recording. So based on feedback that people receive in the story circle and then supported by one-on-one conversations with facilitators, the storytellers draft and kind of refine their stories to focus in on what they feel most drawn and most safe and comfortable to share. And for the audio recordings, as you probably noticed, we don't actually use video cameras because people tend to get nervous when they're asked to speak in front of a camera. So we use simple audio recording equipment, such as might be used for recording podcasts or radio pieces and so on. Then as this is unfolding, we also are working with people on images and video editing. So we support people in gathering images they might already have, and also work with them to take original video clips and photos that can work with their stories. And we actually guide people through a very simple hands-on editing tutorial that shows them how to create a draft edit of their story. We use a really user-friendly editing tool called WeVideo. And then finally, we always end with a screening of the stories just within our group, which is such a great way to bring closure to the experience that has unfolded during the workshop, beginning with the story circle and then kind of ending with the completed videos. And then I wanted to just stress, we don't have a link here, but I can certainly put it in the chat box. That the work is really grounded in our ethics guidelines that we have that really stress the key importance of protecting and enhancing storyteller well-being through really careful living consent processes and ongoing engagement with our storytellers, some of whom are with us today, even from prior workshops. So I think we can go to the next slide, and we have our second story. So please, as Orchid just has dropped a note in the chat box, feel free as we go along to share your responses and gratitude and thanks for the stories. And I'm going to turn it back to Orchid.
When I got my period for the first time, my mother gave me a pad, and that was that. No further explanation. And when I had my first visit with a gynecologist, the doctor asked me why I had waited so long to make an appointment. I felt really embarrassed. I was already an adult when my mother finally talked to me about how she had to learn everything about her body on her own, because her mother never told her anything. When I asked my grandma how she had learned, she said the same thing. Why did so many women, including those I cherished and looked up to, feel that anything having to do with their bodies needed to stay unspoken? I decided to pursue public health and learn more about women's health. When it came time to find a topic for my master's thesis, I considered FGMC. I thought back to when I'd been on the gynecologist's examining table. I remembered feeling judged at a time when I was most vulnerable and exposed. I knew something was wrong, that no doctor should make me feel this way, and yet I had said nothing. Then I tried to imagine how a visit to the gynecologist might be for someone who had undergone FGMC. How she would have to try to explain her body, her culture, or why she might forgive her family for what they'd done to her. How she would feel if the doctor asked why she had waited so long to make an appointment, if the doctor examined her in ways that felt wrong. My body cringed at the thought of how painful and violating it might feel. I closed my eyes and crossed my legs tight, shifting in discomfort. So I did a study on how women who have been cut navigate healthcare settings, and I learned that FGMC results in so much more than just a scar. It can lead to a lifelong journey to reclaim one's health and voice. I may not come from a practicing community, but I know how important this is. In this light, I see the ever importance of sexual reproductive health advocacy. When I got my period,
I think we can now continue to the next story.
Continue to the next story? Okay. So
Yes.
everyone, just feel free to put, as we said before, any appreciations or comments after each story in the chat box. And I will press play on our next one.
It was a cold morning when my grandmother, Ngamano, led me and my sisters into the next yard, where a group of other girls were seated on a mat. We heard piercing screams coming from the neighbor's house, and I said, "Grandma, what is happening?" Munebekere. She told me, "Today you will be introduced to womanhood. Bimbaldundila Musuyalet." I don't understand, but we keep hearing the screams. They took my sister next, and we cry her name again and again. When it was my turn, I tried to run, but my legs were too short to escape the old women who were guarding the yard. As I was dragged into the house, I saw my little sister with blood dripping down her legs. I begged for mercy as my clitoris was ripped off with a knife. The pain was unbearable. I cried to my grandma, "What wrong have we done to deserve this punishment?" She said nothing. For years afterwards, my sisters and I panicked at the sight of any kind of bleed. Of course, a light scar formed across my vagina and sealed it. To this day, I cannot use tampons. I am looking for a doctor so I can learn more about what was done to me and the consequences of it. I am Mandinka. We are the largest ethnic group in the Gambia. We have the highest rate of FGMC. People are so convinced that it needs to continue. Even though I am educated, I'm from a family that will not let this tradition die. I had to leave because they and others in the community threatened me for speaking out. My wedding night will not be one of happiness. My grandmother will again use a knife, this time to open me for sex. I am becoming the best version of who I can be. This practice did not make me a woman. I am doing that.
Why did this question and many others strike a chord with me to my very soul? Is it because I've known about FGM but never really put faces to the numbers? Is it because I come from a tribe in Kenya that used to cut girls? The practice of FGM in my tribe, Meru, is shrouded in secrecy, and not much was mentioned to me growing up. It is only now in my adult life that the veil has been uncovered for me. Are the voices of my ancestors who silently suffered now urging me, do something, do something? I've spoken with women in a refugee resettlement hub in Clarkston, Georgia. Many of them made connections for the very first time between what was done to them as little girls and the medical and mental health challenges they face today. I can still hear their voices in the quiet moments of my days. You mean it doesn't have to hurt when I pee? You mean I'm supposed to have 2 holes down there? Can I have sex with my husband and be pain-free? Now that I've shared my story, how can I get rid of the pain in my head? My husband left me because I did not enjoy sex with him. I did not know that when I urinate, it's not supposed to trickle. My doctor asked me what happened down there. I did not know something was wrong with me. I'm afraid my husband will make our daughters go through this. Why does my whole body hurt? My period is too painful. I thought I had difficulty with childbirth because I did something wrong. Can you help me get fixed down there? Is there a doctor who can open me back up? I need to be free and powerful. There's one question that all of them asked. How can I get help? In that safe space where they shared their stories, a fire was lit inside of me, an urgency to act. I am all the ancestors I pour libation to. They are no dead people. We just shed ourselves. I'm all of them together, calling for an end to FGM.
One day, I heard drumming in our compound. People were dancing, they had painted their faces white, and they were singing. I had never heard the song before, and I was curious. When I came closer to the circle, I saw my sister sitting blindfolded in the middle with other girls. Then someone grabbed me and put me next to her. We were carried to the outskirts of Bakau, where there was a ruthless shark. Then one by one, they started taking each girl inside, and after several minutes of screaming, they carried her back outside. What was going on behind the wall? When my turn came, 4 people held me down, 1 on each limb. Auntie Mena made 3 big cuts. I was 8 years old, and I knew something had been removed. They put herbs on my wounds, and we wore loose gowns throughout the slow healing process. Some people justify FGMC by saying it is part of Islam, but there are ethnic groups who are Muslims and don't cut their girls. My mother is Wolof, and they do not practice FGM. Women who are not cut are called Solima, uncut. They are considered promiscuous. I started getting infections, but I didn't understand why. Years later, when my leg needed to be amputated, doctors needed to put a catheter in me and couldn't. Only then did I find out that what had happened to me was type 3 FGMC. In order to put the catheter in, they had to perform defibrillation to open me up. I felt like I was less than, both physically and mentally. I struggled with depression. I was diagnosed with vaginismus, and when I got married, I had to go through pelvic floor therapy. I didn't feel like a woman at all. But gradually, I learned I could heal some of my pain. I met with doctors and therapists and slowly changed how I viewed my body. In 2017, I got a clitoral restoration surgery. I started advocating more for an end to FGMC. Today, I still work on my healing, but many of my younger cousins have been spared.
Na Mariama, Mariama, na Mariama, Sibo Mariama, din dole baloba sina bambaina o senyoro, fenke senyoro, fenke watoita musobulu dala nanding wo senyoro. Na Mariama, Mariama, na Mariama, Sibo Mariama, din dole baloba sina bambaina o senyoro, fenke.
Just a quick reminder before I press play on the next one to make sure you're still breathing. It's really easy to hold your breath, which is bad for you. So just make sure you're still breathing. Make sure that you exhale and pat yourself, squeeze yourself. Make sure your blood flow is moving. Then we can take in and hold everybody's stories better. Here we go.
For the past year, I have been part of legal group working to ban FGMC in the country where I was born, Guinea-Bissau. We also gave help to girls who have been cut. It means so much to me because I feel connected to the pain they've gone through. When I was a child, I lived in constant fear. For years, I lived in the dark room. My father and grandmother beat me constantly. They threw me against the sink and the toilet. I went to school in my pajama, and my school bag was the plastic bag from the supermarket. At the beginning of the year, when it was time for teachers to meet parents, the other kids came with their mothers and fathers. But for me, no one came. Finally, when I was 10, I was sent to a convent school. I remember the day I had to pack up my things. My father told me, "You are nothing. You are going to become a woman on the street." I didn't know what could happen at the convent, but I thought maybe finally I will find peace, security, and love. For the first month, I didn't smile at all. The teacher told me, "Your past doesn't define your future. You can change what happened, but if you study, you can build a different life." So I became the best student, and as a result, they sent me to the best high school in our city. I graduated, finished my college degree, worked, and traveled. The nuns gave me a new path, but every day was like a fight for me. I had to prove that what my father said about me wasn't true. I still feel like I have to wear a mask and constantly show that I'm a strong woman. But I'm also learning how to ask for help. I'm feeling less afraid to talk about who I am and where I came from. And when I work with girls, I show them love and care. Because when you help someone, you never know what will happen.
In my family, we come from many communities. Some things that were not mandatory for me were for my cousins and friends. One day, a friend of mine suddenly went missing. We had grown up together. Oh, Pigant. Rumors said she had gone to Ekuteni. Throughout childhood, I had seen other girls come back from the ceremonies done there. Boys would hold mirrors under their skirts to try to see what had been done. I didn't know the details, but I knew it was something bad. A few months later, she came back with her hair shaved off. Even her eyelashes were gone. She behaved differently. She said she was a woman now. I had questions. What had happened to her? Why couldn't we be friends anymore? Then my best friend, who was a boy, told me he would be leaving too and coming back in 3 months. I had seen it before. The boys gathered as amasogane, painted white, singing around the township after coming back from the ceremony. I knew they would have a piece of skin cut off with a razor. They have to stay in a bush during winter to transition from boy to man. But 2 months later, his family sent our family a message. He had died. I went to his mom and asked, "What happened?" She said, "They told me he got a cold or some kind of chest problem." I asked, if he was sick for weeks, why didn't they take him to a doctor and save him? I couldn't get answers because I'd get in trouble if I talked about it more. I needed my friend at the time in my life. He was the only one who knew what was going on in my family, but there was nothing I could do. Today, I'm not afraid of getting in trouble anymore. I believe our young people can be honored as they grow into adults without being harmed. Our cultural traditions can change for better.
About 15 years ago, my mother went out to shop for a gift. When I asked her what it was for, even though it was just us at home, she whispered, "It's a gift for your niece because she had her khatna performed." I remember questioning my mother about khatna, about why it was done. She deflected, insisting it was compulsory, a required tradition passed down through generations. You see, I belong to the Dawoodi Bohra community, where questioning the Sayadna's authority leads to excommunication. But I know she did not really know why it was done. She was just pointing to the rules that all of us in the community are taught. My grandmother had 8 daughters. My mother, 3. My sisters, 2 each. We all learned that we had received a gift too, a so-called gift of purity, justified by community traditions and religious sanction. Now, knowing better, I ask myself, because I was cut, am I truly pure? Am I loved more? Do I feel cleaner because of the cut? Did I attain eternal bliss or not? This weighed on my heart for years until I learned the truth about Khatna, or as it's usually called outside of our community, FGMC. This is what I wish my mother would have told me, what her mother should have told her, and what I want to tell my family, every woman, every man out there who still believes in this so-called gift. Khatna is when a piece of the clitoral hood, and sometimes more, is cut off. For me, it's a mutilation that exposes nerve endings and is meant to discourage self-pleasure and limit the possibility of sexual satisfaction through clitoral stimulation. I couldn't convince my family when I tried to tell them that Khatna is wrong, but the powerful stories of other survivors around the world give me the courage to speak up against FGMC. It's time to challenge the traditions that harm us and to protect the real purity, the kind that comes from love, respect, and the right to make choices about our own bodies.
And yeah, I
Everyone, we're
think
just doing a quick reshare because we had to do a re-upload of the next story. All right. Here we are, and this is the last story of that we're screening today.
I was so happy when you were born, but then I remembered you were a girl. When I was your age, I wondered, why did no one protect me? I want you to know that I tried to protect you. I want to tell you a story about my scar. It happened when I was 6 years old. My parents told me I was going to my dad's village. When we arrived, my grandmother said, "We are all going to a banana plantation." The next day, there was singing and dancing, and for a while I was happy, until I was abruptly snatched from the crowd, taken into a hut, laid on the ground, and cut. No banana plantation. Everything had been a lie. I felt deceived. I had been sent there just for FGMC. As the wound healed into a scar, a lot changed. I was no longer interested in playing with my siblings. I blamed my mom for what happened, even though it was my dad's side of the family. But my dad just said, "It's a woman thing. I have no say in it." More than a decade later, I started asking questions. My mom said, It was best for you girls because it keeps you virgins until you are married. I told her more than half of the girls I went into the bush with had kids out of wedlock. When I got pregnant myself, instead of thinking about whether I'd have a healthy baby, I worried what would happen if I had a girl. We would only cut her just a little, family members said. I said, no, don't even try to get this done. I now am not afraid to talk in public about stopping FGMC. I joined a coalition in Washington state working to pass a law against it. If there had been laws when I was a child, things would be different. I was able to convince another family member not to have her girls cut. But I wasn't able to convince your mother. All I think is that I failed you. I wish I didn't have the scar. I wish you didn't have one either. But we don't have to be silent about it.
All right. Oh, we can do a big exhale and make sure you're comfortable wherever you are. I hope whoever was driving is no longer driving. I hope everybody's in a safe, comfortable place. We're gonna move into just some open question and answer time with the storytellers that we do have here logged on for this event. So again, we're using the chat box. If you, yes, you can put in there your thank yous, your appreciations, feelings and reactions that you're having. You can also feel free to put a question in there that is directed toward survivor storytellers, advocate storytellers, and I will pay attention to what's going on in the chat box and bring those questions forward. I tried to stay on top of the chat box to see if there were any earlier questions, and I don't have any noted. So let's just give a moment. It takes a moment just to process at all after holding all of the stories. Yes, and thank you. Arias put in there, if you have questions about the workshop, anything about what it was like for these storytellers or any storytellers in past workshops to go from no digital story to having a digital story like this that's complete and ready to be shared, feel free to ask those as well. And while those comments are still coming in, I'm just because I'm unmuted, I just want to say out loud, giant thank you to all of the storytellers. And particularly, I want to appreciate the storytellers who are here. For any of us who've ever had a digital story we've made be shared with people that we know and don't know, it's a real emotional experience, a risk, a trust that's given. So appreciations to storytellers for being here. All right, we have one question, a great one. How are you now? I'm going to open the floor for any of our storytellers who are here to jump in and respond to how are you now? And also, storytellers, if you want to use the chat box rather than unmute and speak, you can totally go ahead and do that too. I'll read it out loud so that people who are on any kind of device or in any situation where they can't read the chat will know what you said.
So may I?
Absolutely, Jennifer.
Thank you. So to answer the question, now I feel better and more confident to talk about my story and to improve other girls and people to be better and to don't let their past have influence in their future.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Any other storyteller want to respond?
Yeah, I can share a little bit. I think I feel good now. I feel different than I had initially with participating in the workshop. I think initially I had some hesitancy in being able to think how my personal connections can help uplift the voices of survivors or individuals who have been impacted by FGMC. And I think with everybody that I met at the workshop, I was better able to see my role in being an ally and an advocate in the efforts to end FGMC. And I feel more comfortable with um, being able to lead some discussions about FGMC, having more of a knowledge base on the different experiences people have faced with FGMC, given the cultural nuances and the diversity that people may come from. So I think I feel more confident as well in being a public health practitioner and in being someone to help in building a supportive survivor-led approach to the conversation about FGMC.
Thanks, Arias. Maybe I'll jump in with a question just because Jennifer and Gugu and Arias are three of our advocate ally storytellers from this most recent workshop. And so I thought maybe I'd just ask a question that's related to that position that you each hold. So and I'll connect this to I guess I'll say two questions. One, just what does it mean to you personally to act as an ally in this effort to end FGMC? And then why do you think it's especially important now, especially when there have been more visible efforts against FGMC, and so there's also a global backlash against that. And we're seeing that in Gambia, where there's recent strong legislative efforts to overturn laws banning FGMC. So in that context, why do you think it's especially important for advocates, both survivor advocates, ally advocates, to be visible and to be vocal? So one, what's it like for you? What does it mean to you to be an ally? And then two, how do you think allies and survivor advocates can really work together to address backlash?
I think maybe I can jump in here because I was kind of talking about that a little bit. But I think for me, acting as an ally is being able to use my voice and platforms or like conversations within my networks to amplify the stories and the experiences of survivors I think part of that involves educating myself, educating people in my social network about FGMC, having conversations that challenge any misconceptions that people might initially have about FGMC. And again, going back to supporting some of the survivor-led initiatives and making sure that those are at the forefront, but also at the same time, not making it solely their responsibility. I think we all have a shared responsibility to educating ourselves and having those conversations, and also playing into raising awareness more globally. I think if they see that there is that sense of shared responsibility, that collective action towards ending FGMC, I think it shows that there's a lot of support in ending the practice and supporting legislation or whatever the efforts are to put survivors at the forefront and recognizing the public health implications of a practice such as FGMC. And yeah.
Thank you.
I guess too, to add, I like even now more than ever, I think with like what's happening in the Gambia, it seems that there's maybe like a lack of representation of the survivor voices when you think about maybe who's making the decisions about repealing the ban. And so yeah, I think that collective effort and amplifying those voices is very important in the time.
Thank you. Google or Jennifer, anything either of you wants to add? No pressure, just a welcome.
Yes, about the Gambian situation, I think that this is the moment to unite our voice and use the video that you did in California to show the international community and the country Gambia that FGM is not good for the girls, have a bad impact and impact for the life, and is not something, is not religion, because Quran don't say anything about FGM. So is unite our voice and use our video and share and try to make them listen that FGM is not good. It's something that it's against of human rights. It's not something cultural. It's not something against freedom. Yes, it's my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Google's here in the chat box. Google, anything you want to add in the chat box?
Oh, is that me talking to you? I'm so
Or
sorry.
yeah, or just speak it out.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I got distracted because I was starting work when we started, and I had a meeting that I didn't even know we were gonna have. So I missed out on a lot. I just had some few pieces there and there. So I don't know if I missed a chance for me to say anything to share.
You have not. You are so
Oh.
welcome to jump in and share.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you're playing my story or it's gonna be played another time, or you played.
We played it.
Listened. Oh, you played it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, but then let me just add some things regarding my story. Like
Great.
I shared my story because and in fact, when I saw the ad that you guys had on Instagram, I was touched because I had an experience about a friend that I had who was a best friend of mine when I was a teenager that I lost through the practice. And I just thought this is not fair that we lose people this way. And I'm sure there's so many other more people that we lost through the practice. So it was something very concerning to me, and I felt compelled that I should get involved. And I'm glad that you guys advertise what you do on social media, because I wouldn't have known about this. And thank you so much for making sure that I actually come all the way like to California as well, because that has given me, like me being on that platform and sharing the story has given me so much opportunities for people to actually ask me to come advocate, to come join meetings. Now I know so much about FGMC, and I can tell people, I teach people about FGMC, and I didn't really know so much about it, that this practice, I thought it was only happening in South Africa, and I thought it was just like our cultures in South Africa, but I learned that it's happening all over the world. I didn't even know it happens in like in India, for instance. I didn't even know. I wouldn't have imagined that. So I just want to tell the people that have shared their stories, and especially those ones that were victims, that I just appreciate them for sharing that story, because now they've brought in my knowledge, and they're helping a lot more people to start advocating against this practice, which is very unfair. And it hurts me so bad to see that Gambia and other countries, maybe they still want to bring it back. They still believe in this practice. I think there's nothing wrong with practicing culture, but then there are safer ways and measures that this can be done. So we need to advocate and maybe bring policies that are against the cutting of the skin, or like maybe make sure that we have professionals that are involved, like doctors that can be involved in this practice, that know exactly how it should be done. So I really thank Sahio very much for this opportunity. Thank you very much, guys. Yeah.
Thank you, Gugu. I'm glad that you were able to hop back on so that everybody could hear from you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna also just give everybody who's logged on just a second welcome to feel free to put anything in the chat box. And and I always just want to say that, questions, if you're worried that you need to have some kind of fancy global whatever question, please know that that's not the case. Questions like, how are you now? Just really direct and personal and caring questions are absolutely welcome.
I see a comment from Renee about please continuing to produce these stories, and we do have an announcement later about our upcoming workshop, but we're always definitely looking forward for opportunities to be able to uplift these narratives.
Yeah, thank you, Renee. Also, hi. I think that there's, if I can insert something in here too, I think that there's so many ways that all different kinds of people can support really, survivor-centered efforts to end FGMC, and whether that's about advocating for funding, the grant program that funded this workshop is ending. OVC, Office on Victims of Crime, isn't going to continue this grant program. So, supporting resources to go to projects like this is a big deal. Providing just direct emotional support, especially I think to survivors who it's exhausting to speak again and again. That's part of the strength of digital storytelling, is you can get your story out there and you don't need to be there present to make your body say this and experience all the risk and fear and discomfort or re-traumatization, whatever it is your body feels, over and over again. But to be advocating in your immediate family for the new generation in your family, to be advocating at political spheres, to be advocating at community levels. It's exhausting. So supporting personally, supporting even, you know, when we think if we have the right to vote, who we vote for does end up impacting whether gender-based violence is accepted as grounds for asylum or not. And that does impact survivors of FGMC, who, like one of our stories showed, will face cutting again. It's not like once you're cut, that's it for everybody. Who will face cutting again if they go home, if they get sent home. So just to say, there's so many ways to support. We have a question. Why do the women and girls have to suffer for men and boys' lack of self-control? Isn't that the question for all humanity across all time? I'm not sure if, but I'm gonna open it up to our panelists to see if anybody wants to share a response to that.
I mean, I don't have an exact answer. I don't know why this tends to be the case with maybe some of the more patriarchal or traditional um, practices of a culture or community, but I think that's part of the reason why too, with our Voices project, we try to expand on the type of narratives that we share. I think we've been trying to engage men and boys in the conversation to end FGMC as well, just to kind of gain their perspective and also to educate and inform, because I think typically an issue such as FGMC, it in some cultures or in families, this issue tends to be framed as like a women's health issue or like a women's only issue. So I don't think there's much involvement starting at a young age and what this topic is and how they can play a role um, in supporting their sisters, their mothers, or future wives as well. So yeah, like you said, Orchid, I think that's the question for all of humanity, but I think that's maybe kind of why we tend to see that.
Thanks, Audius.
And I think maybe to shed a little bit of light of what you were saying about like advocacy within your own families. And I think this is a concept that I most recently came across, which is like quiet activism and like kind of the local or social level change that you're able to make within your family or friends and social networks. I think after the release of my story, when I showed it to my mother, to my grandmother, and to my family, they're like, "Oh, so like this is the work that you're doing, or like this is what you're involved with." And I was like, "Yeah," and look here you are in my videos too. And I think it helped just starting a conversation too, because I don't think that they were too familiar with what FGMC was, though I try to explain to them a little bit about like my work or uh, studying public health and all that. So I think it helped in talking about FGMC too, and then also talking about, because in my story I talk on how conversations around our sexual and reproductive health within the women in my family is pretty quiet or not really spoken about. So it was mostly just like, oh yeah, I don't know why we didn't like talk about this, but I think it was just so built into them. It wasn't really something that they questioned, but I think now being able to have that conversation, there's more comfortability, I think, among us and discussing things like that.
Thank you, Audius. It's actually great to hear, to get to know any insights into what happens after the stories are made for
Yeah.
storytellers with their own friends and family. Because that is an important place, not just the big public, you know, the big kind of public.
Yeah, right at home too.
Jennifer and Google, do either of you want to share anything about what it was like for you after you made the story, or how you felt, or if anybody in your life has seen it?
think maybe Google might also be busy with work on the side, but
I know.
if you can message in the chat to Gugu or Jennifer.
Also, just to highlight, especially for people who, are on a smaller device or can't access the chat box, we have just a sharing of contact information from Osman. Uh, about, thank you to everyone who shared their stories as a researcher and educator focused on preventing FGM and providing psychosexual services for survivors in Iran. If anyone has interest in collaborating in this field, please feel free to email me, and it's mahmoudi .osman@gmail.com. Any other questions and comments from anybody? All right, then I'm gonna close up our Q&A time. I'm gonna pass it back to Amy and Audius to wrap us up.
Yeah, I think we can maybe pull up the slides once more.
Thanks, Orchid. Thanks, everyone who replied. I just had a quick note to put in the word about our new Voices to End FGMC podcast. We have 6 episodes, and as you've seen from our digital stories that were shared, they're quite short. And so if you're interested in hearing kind of the story behind some of the stories, the podcast is a great opportunity to do that, as well as to kind of delve a little bit more deeply into some of the health and political issues around the topic in various parts of the world, particularly within the Dawoodi Bohra community, as well as in several countries in Africa. So please have a listen to that and share the word. And then I think Audius was going to have a little announcement about our next workshop.
Yeah, so we have our next Voices to End FGMC workshop coming soon. I believe we have a slide on it so you can see the dates for those workshop sessions. It's going to be a hybrid session. So we'll have 2 virtual sessions, and then we'll have 2 in-person sessions taking place in Washington, D.C. And let's see here. Yeah, the dates for the online sessions are May 29th and June 5th. And then we have the in-person dates later on June 22nd and 23rd. So we have the applications open. And let's see if I can link to you all in the chat. Unfortunately, at this time, we're only able to take participants who are US based. And that's mostly just due to funding constraints. But as mentioned, we hope to, in the future, secure more funding opportunities to be able to expand who we're able to have participate in these workshops. So we definitely encourage you to share this with your network and to also apply yourself if you're interested in sharing your story or as your role as an activist or advocate in the field to end. Yeah, here we have the information on the slide. We're going to share these all with you afterwards, so you'll have access to the link as well, but I share the application here in the chat. And yeah, I think the next slide that we have is just our contact information. Here Audius at the top, we have Orchid and Amy's contact information, and here's the link for our Voices website. And I do see that, Jennifer, you have your hand raised if you wanted to mention something.
Yes, thank you, Aris. So is one point. My internet is not good, so I didn't hear some questions. But I have
Okay.
one point that I would like to talk about the Gambia situation.
Okay.
Because Gambia is very close to Guinea-Bissau, the country where I was born. So if Gambia say yes to FGM, automatically other countries that ban FGM years ago, such Guinea-Bissau in 2011, you have chance. So, the same thing happen in Guinea-Bissau and other countries that banning FGM. So it's very, very important to use our voice, and all organizations that work with FGM, it's the moment to stop, because if you don't stop now, then will be worse to stop, because now it's one country and it's easy to stop. Yeah, it's my point. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point to make and a good ending to our screening here today about the importance of continuing to uplift these narratives, especially whenever there's a call to action that we can all respond to in sharing these narratives. Thank you for that, Jennifer. And thank you all again for joining us today. I left in the chat an evaluation form just to get your feedback on today's screening. And yeah, that's it from us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, storytellers. Thank you, story watchers. Stay in touch.